Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Gentleman's Magazine from March 1800, and this article is entitled Retrospect of the 18th Century, Essay 2. So we read Essay 1, which was more or less a very, very short overview of the 17th century. They're like, just for a review, this is what happened before the 18th century. So I thought this might be interesting because, as I mentioned in the other one, I don't know that much about the history of England at all, let alone during the 18th century or the 17th century. So I am more than happy to educate myself and continue to learn more. I think these are very interesting, and so far they've been spot on historically. So we will see if that continues to be the case. All right, let's take a look. During and after this struggle for the sister kingdom? Yeah? Struggle. Okay. During and after this struggle for the sister kingdom, the nation was deeply embarked in a war on the continent, so that the discontents observed that instead of being allies, we were become principals and bore the greatest part of the burden, though we had the least share of the profit. Whoa, that's not biased at all. Sheesh. Okay, that's clearly this person's personal opinion. And from this connection with William, many have dated those continental alliances which have engaged for ages the I'm not familiar with this word, animadversions or elogiums of our different politicians. I'm sorry. I need to look that up. Animadversion? Okay, that means criticism or censure. Animadversion. Okay, there you go. Or elogiums. Does that also mean criticism? A judicial statement, extract, or summary. Okay, elogium, short saying or sentence, inscription on a tombstone, clause in a will, or judicial statement. Okay. That has too many meanings. Like, I don't know what that... Okay. Okay, which have engaged for ages the animadversions or elogiums of our different politicians. Okay, let me rephrase that then. Which have engaged for ages the criticisms or like taglines of our different politicians. Like, that's how I would like interpret the meaning of that. This contest was ended after various successes to which the king's personal valor in a great measure contributed by the Peace of Ryswick, signed September 10th, 1694. Geez, we're still not even in the 18th century, by which tranquility was restored to the great part of Europe, and His Majesty was secured in the possession of the kingdoms which he had so bravely defended at the hazard of his royal person and all he held dear. Sure, whilst the king was thus publicly engaged for the safety and honor of the nation, James and his adherents were secretly plotting the destruction of his person and the overthrow of his government. But through the vigilance and prudent direction of his queen and others, guided by the blessing of an almighty providence, their machinations were frustrated, and several of the late king's abettors were brought to condign punishment. But during this war, His Majesty's feelings were most acutely tried in the loss of Dr. Tillotson, Archbishop of Canterbury, who died on November 22nd, 1694, deeply regretted, and by that of his beloved queen on December 28 following of the smallpox. His distress was so poignant that for some weeks after her death he could neither see company nor attend to the business of state. In her he had lost a faithful and obedient wife, blessed with a clear apprehension, a tenacious memory, and a solid judgment, and who had endeared herself to the nation by her strict adherence to the Protestant religion, by her care of the state during the absence of the king, and by her unruffled passions, even temper, and mild conversation. Though King William, during the greatest part of his reign, had had to combat with divisions between the Houses of Parliament, and of the factious in diverse parts of the nations. I want to say factions? Maybe I'm misreading that. Yet he had the satisfaction toward the close of his life of seeing them subside, and all parties join in reprobating the insidious conduct of France, and cordially entering into his views of recommencing a continental war, on the wide and firm basis of the closest alliance with his imperial majesty and the States General. Thus commenced the new century with the most active preparations for hostilities. Oh, that's a great start to the century. But the hopes of the nation were considerably dampened by his majesty's having a fall from his horse on the 21st day of February, which, from the injury he then received, terminated in his death on March 8th, 1701. 02? Like, 1701 too? Like, which is it? 1701 or 1702? I'll look that up in a bit. A few days before his dissolution, he gave his assent by commission to the Act of Attainder against the pretended Prince of Wales, by which he secured the succession of the crown in the Protestant line, and thereby bequeathed to us the blessings of the religion and constitution we now enjoy. And had no other good resulted from the Revolution but this, it would have endeared the memory of King William to every true Protestant and friend to his country, for in no transaction in which we are concerned could the hand of God be more conspicuous in rescuing us from the superstitions of popery and from the despotism of arbitrary princes. Right, okay. It's interesting that so many people were against the Catholic Church. Like, I find that slightly strange, because I am not under the impression that the Church of England was that much better, but, then again, I'm not part of either one of them, so, this is an outside perspective. I don't see a huge difference, but, let me know in the comments below, what are the differences between Catholicism and the Church of England, besides allowing divorce, of course. Anyway, discordant indeed have been the opinions of historians on the character of this prince, his conduct having been portrayed in all the different lights and shades which the actions of man can possibly bear, but far removed from the causes which influenced the mediums through which his conduct was then viewed, we may, perhaps, with greater impartiality attempt an outline of his likeness. His person, though of the middle stature and not robust, yet from his aquiline nose, sparkling eyes, large forehead, and solemn aspect, was commanding and respectful. His learning was not extensive, though he was well versed in the French language, tolerably in the German and English. He was religious, temperate, sincere, and just, a consummate sage, politician, an intrepid and successful warrior, indefatigable in the field and in the cabinet, giving out his orders with his own mouth, and writing dispatches with his own hand. But as a foil to these great qualifications, truth extracts from us the confession that he was too ambitious, addicted to avarice, and in the few instances in which his liberality was exerted, it was profuse without a due discrimination of merit. Yet in the aggregate, William III was undoubtedly one of the greatest men of his age, a true friend to liberty, the preserver of his country, the deliverer of Britain, and the defender of the freedom of Europe. Okay. On the death of King William, the party denominated Whigs were exceedingly disheartened, supposing from the known predilection of his successor to the opposite one of the Tories, that all the plans which had been devised by their favorite monarch would be relinquished, and all their hopes of employment entirely frustrated. But the Princess Anne was no sooner ascended to the throne than she assured her Parliament that she was determined to pursue the measures which had been concluded on by her predecessor, and that no endeavors should be wanting on her part to humble the power of France. In Holland, the intelligence of the king's death caused the greatest dismay, but the assurances which they received from Queen Anne's firm alliance and protection raised them from their despondency, and they unanimously determined on pursuing the most vigorous measures against the common enemy. In France, the certification of his dissolution occasioned universal rejoicings, a sure criterion in what estimation his abilities were considered by them, and at Rome they were still more indecorous, so that the imperial minister complained of them as an insult to the Emperor, William's friend and ally. The Earl of Marlborough, who enjoyed Her Majesty's confidence, or at least that of the majority of the council, having been dispatched to Holland, concluded with the States General and the Imperial Minister that war should be declared against France and Spain on the same day at Vienna, London, and The Hague, and returned to England to hasten the preparations for opening the campaign on the continent. T. Mott as FSM. To be continued. This one is at least as interesting as the last one. It doesn't cover nearly as much time, and I'm going to do some fact checking, so let me look it up. Kings of England. Kings and Queens of Great Britain. So, this is from historic-uk.com. So this is the same one I looked up before. I'm going to skip ahead to the century we're talking about. I am not starting all the way at the beginning, because that would just be silly. All right. William and Mary was where we were, yeah? William III and Mary II, yeah? Okay, so they talked about William and Mary, and then afterwards, Queen Anne became queen. All right, William III and Mary II, also known as William and Mary. Okay, on the 5 November 1688, William of Orange sailed his fleet over 450 ships unopposed by the Royal Navy into Torbay Harbor and landed his troops in Devon. Gathering local support, he marched his army, now 20,000 strong, on to London in the Glorious Revolution. Many of James II's army had defected to support William, as well as James's other daughter Anne. William and Mary were to reign jointly, and William was to have the crown for life after Mary died in 1694. James plotted to regain the throne and in 1689 landed in Ireland. William defeated James in the Battle of the Boyne, and James fled again to France as a guest of Louis XIV. Okay, and then Anne, so here it says 1702 was when he passed away. And actually, I'm going to open another tab, and I'm going to look up William III of England and see if I can find like the Wikipedia article on him, because they gave some more like details that I wanted to fact check. Alrighty. William III, also widely known as William of Orange, was the sovereign Prince of Orange from birth. It looks like he had some sort of ties to the Dutch, which is probably why they called him Prince of Orange, yeah? King of England, Ireland, and Scotland from 1689 until his death in 1702. As King of Scotland, he is known as William II. He is sometimes informally known as King Billy in Ireland and Scotland. His victory at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690 is commemorated by Unionists who display orange colors in his honor. He ruled Britain alongside his wife and cousin, Queen Mary II, and popular histories usually refer to their reign as that of William and Mary. All right. Only child, blah, blah, blah. A Protestant, William participated in several wars against the powerful Catholic ruler Louis XIV, in coalition with both Protestant and Catholic powers in Europe. Many Protestants herald William as a champion of their faith. That's why it was mentioned several times, yeah? Where the writer is obviously Protestant. In 1685, his Catholic uncle and father-in-law James became King of England, Scotland, and Ireland. James's reign was unpopular with the Protestant majority in Britain, who feared a revival of Catholicism. Supported by a group of influential British political and religious leaders, William invaded England in what was known as the Glorious Revolution. In 1688, he landed at the southwestern English port of Brixham. James was deposed shortly afterward. William's reputation as a staunch Protestant enabled him and his wife to take power. During the early years of his reign, William was occupied abroad with the 9 Years' War, leaving Mary to govern Britain alone. She died in 1694. In 1696, the Jacobites, a faction loyal to the deposed James, plotted unsuccessfully to assassinate William and restore James to the throne. William's lack of children and the death in 1700 of his nephew, Prince William, Duke of Gloucester, the son of his sister-in-law Anne, threatened the Protestant succession. The danger was averted by placing distant relatives, the Protestant Hanoverians, in line to the throne with the Act of Settlement 1701. Upon his death in 1702, the king was succeeded in Britain by Anne as a titular Prince of Orange by his cousin John William Friso, beginning the second standholderless period. That was the reign of Holland, yes? He was born in The Hague. It's interesting. 8 days before William was born, his father died of smallpox. That's crazy. I think it's weird when your parents die before you were born, you know? Like, it's weird. I'm skipping down. I'm more interested in his death because they gave a lot of details about his death, and I'm curious to know how much of that is truth and if any of it is fiction, yeah? There were some rumors of homosexuality with William III. During the 1690s, rumors grew of William's alleged homosexual inclinations and led to the publication of many satirical pamphlets by his Jacobite detractors. He did have several close male associates, including 2 Dutch courtiers to whom he granted English titles. Hans Willem Bentinck and became Earl of Portland, and Arnold Joost van Keppel was created Earl of Albemarle. These relationships with male friends and his apparent lack of mistresses led William's enemies to suggest that he might prefer homosexual relationships. William's modern biographers disagree on the veracity of these allegations. Some believe there may have been truth to the rumors, while others affirm that there were no more than figments of the enemy's imagination, as it was common for someone childless like William to adopt or evince paternal affections for a younger man. I don't know if he had homosexual inclinations or not. I have no idea. But I think that saying because he didn't have mistresses, he must be gay is a little bit strange. Because maybe he's just monogamous. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who are monogamous. Maybe he was asexual. You know? Maybe that's why he didn't have children. I don't know that. I have no idea. I'm just throwing out some possibilities, yeah? Maybe it just wasn't something he was interested in. Like, you don't know for sure. And it's also possible that he or his wife had fertility issues. They were related. Yeah? Maybe they both did. So, it's hard to say. Anyway, that caught my eye. All right, death. Let's go on to death. In 1702, William died of pneumonia, a complication from a broken collarbone following a fall from his horse Sorrel. That's basically what they said, right? So, I'm impressed with how accurate this is. It was rumored that the horse had been confiscated from Sir John Fenwick, one of the Jacobites who had conspired against William. Because his horse had stumbled into a mole's burrow, many Jacobites toasted the little gentleman in the black velvet waistcoat. What? Years later, Winston Churchill, in his A History of the English-Speaking Peoples, stated that the fall opened the door to a troop of lurking foes. William was buried in Westminster Abbey alongside his wife. His sister-in-law and cousin Anne became Queen Regnant of England, Scotland, and Ireland. So, let's move on to Anne, yeah? So going back to historicuk.com, Anne, 1702 to 1714. Anne was the second daughter of James II. She had 17 pregnancies, but only one child survived, William, who died of smallpox, aged just 11. You know, that's one of those stories where you're like, you had so much bad luck. That sucks. But, however, women who had a lot of miscarriages or like stillbirths, I wonder how many of them were simply Rh factor negative, you know, which is something that can be treated today and then it's no longer an issue to affect your child. However, back then, obviously, there was no treatment, so if you were Rh factor negative, you didn't know it, first of all, and you just had lots of stillbirths and miscarriages. Like, it's really, really tragic, though. It makes me wonder if that wasn't the case with her, because that would explain it, in which case William, her son that actually survived birth, may have also been Rh factor negative, which is why he also survived. Anyway, it's just speculation, but that's just, with that much bad luck, you're bound to get some good luck after that. It's just horrible. A staunch high church Protestant, Anne was 37 years old when she succeeded to the throne. Anne was a close friend of Sarah Churchill, the Duchess of Marlborough. Sarah's husband, the Duke of Marlborough, commanded the English army in the War of Spanish Succession, winning a series of major battles with the French and gaining the country an influence never before attained in Europe. It was during Anne's reign that the United Kingdom of Great Britain was created by the Union of England and Scotland. After Anne's death, the succession went to the nearest Protestant relative of the Stuart line. This was Sophia, the daughter of Elizabeth of Bohemia, James I's only daughter, but she died a few weeks before Anne, so the throne passed to her son George. Okay, that sort of makes sense. But it's so funny because I feel like we have this impression that in England the throne just passed from father to son and father to son, or, in this case, father to daughter. But in general, it didn't. Like, it went to cousins, it went to, second cousins. It was passed around, and I'm wondering if the people even knew that they were in line for the throne at the time. Because today it feels much more straightforward. But in the article, we didn't quite get to this point. But I would like to quickly do a Wikipedia search of Anne, Queen Anne. Yeah, I think she's the only Queen Anne, because they didn't have a number after her name. So, Queen Anne. And Queen of Great Britain. She looks tall in the picture, but, it could just be perspective. Does it say how tall she is? I'm just curious. No, it doesn't say. Okay, they might not have written it down. All right. Was Queen of England, Scotland, and Ireland from the 8th of March, 1702 until the 1st of May, 1707. On 1 May, 1707, under the Acts of Union, the kingdoms of England and Scotland united as a single sovereign state known as Great Britain, and continued to reign as Queen of Great Britain and Ireland until her death in 1714. Anne was born in the reign of Charles II to his younger brother and heir presumptive James, who suspected Roman Catholicism was unpopular in England. On Charles's instructions, Anne and her elder sister Mary were raised as Anglicans. Mary married their Dutch Protestant cousin William III of Orange in 1677, and Anne married Prince George of Denmark in 1683. On Charles's death in 1685, James succeeded to the throne, but just 3 years later he was deposed in the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Mary and William became joint monarchs. Although the sisters had been close, disagreements over Anne's finances, status, and choice of acquaintances arose shortly after Mary's accession, and they became estranged. William and Mary had no children. After Mary's death in 1694, William reigned alone until his own death in 1702, when Anne succeeded him. So she was... Okay, yeah, they did say sister-in-law, didn't they? It's interesting that she was actually related to James II, who was Catholic, and yet she was Protestant. I find that interesting. During her reign, Anne favored moderate Tory politicians who were more likely to share her Anglican religious views than their opponents, the Whigs. The Whigs grew more powerful during the course of the War of the Spanish Succession until 1710, when Anne dismissed many of them from office. Her close friendship with Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, turned sour as the result of political differences. The Duchess took revenge with an unflattering description of the Queen in her memoirs, which was widely accepted by historians until Anne was reassessed in the late 20th century. Interesting. So actually, the descriptions they have, most of them came from Sarah Churchill, who didn't like her at one point, and were kind of talking smack about her. Anne was plagued by poor health throughout her life, and from her 30s she grew increasingly ill and obese. Despite 17 pregnancies, she died without surviving issue and was the last monarch of the House of Stuart. Under the Act of Settlement 1701, which excludes all Catholics, she was succeeded by her second cousin George I of the House of Hanover. Interesting. The Act of Settlement 1701 was excluded all Catholics from reigning, which is why no more of James II's progeny could become king or queen. They had to be Protestant. That is fascinating to me. Like, why was that so important at the time? I'm going to look up these Act of Settlement because, like, can you imagine today being like, you have to be a certain religion in order to reign? It's like, really? Like, you don't care if they're a good monarch? I don't know. Okay, the Act of Settlement is an act of the Parliament of England that settled the succession to the English and Irish crowns to only Protestants, which passed in 1701. More specifically, anyone who became a Roman Catholic or who married one became disqualified to inherit the throne. Oh my gosh. Ugh. This had the effect of deposing the remaining descendants of Charles I, other than his Protestant granddaughter Anne, and the next Protestant in line to the throne was Sophia of Hanover, a granddaughter of James VI and I from his most junior surviving line, and the crowns descending only to her non-Catholic heirs. Sophia died shortly before the death of Queen Anne, and Sophia's son succeeded to the throne as King George I, starting the Hanoverian dynasty in Britain. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Okay, I had no idea that that was a thing. See? I didn't know that much about the history of England, and now I am much more informed. 1701, it became illegal for a monarch of England to be Catholic or to marry one. That is fascinating to me. I don't know if there's a whole lot of other countries that have that rule. That is fascinating to me. Okay, I hope you're as blown away by that as I am, because that's amazing. So interesting. Okay. Anyway, I learned tons today. Tons. That also explains the tone of the article itself, which is very religion heavy. But since this was a factor, I mean, since that Act of Succession came out in 1701 and was passed then, like, it makes sense to me that tone of the article itself would be very religious. Anyway. I feel like it's slightly vague, though, as well as on details, but at the same time, that was very, very fascinating to me. So, leave a comment down below. What did you think of that? Did you find that as fascinating as I did, or did you already know all of this? But I'm pretty blown away. Had no idea that that was a thing. So, no Catholics on the British throne. Is that still in power? I have to find that out. Hang on. Present status. Here we go. As well as being part of the law of the United Kingdom, the Act of Settlement was received into the laws of all the countries and territories over which the British monarch reigned. It remains part of the law of the 15 Commonwealth realms and relevant jurisdictions within those realms. In accordance with established convention, the Statute of Westminster, 1931, and later laws, the Act of Settlement, along with the other laws governing the succession of the Commonwealth realms, may only be changed with the agreement of all the realms, and in some federal realms, the constituent members of these federations. The Succession to the Crown Act 2013 changed many provisions of the Act. So then there's some amendments, but that's crazy. It's still in force. So today, the King or Queen of England is not allowed to be Catholic nor married to a Catholic. That is the weirdest rule I have ever heard. That is so funny. Okay. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that as well. I learned so much today, so please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.